So briefly, I want us to talk about the musculoskeletal system. It's gonna be brief. It's just a synopsis or reminder of what we've learned. Um, in case I'm too fast or in case you cannot hear me, you can always call me back. Let me know if I need to repeat myself or if you have any questions. Funny enough, musculoskeletal system also is a combination of two systems: the skeletal system and the muscular system. So there are two systems, but because of the curriculum as recommended by the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria, they are put together. But skeletal system in itself is a massive, is a wide. Even the muscular system, both of them are wide, huge, and voluminous. But for the sake of this lecture, we've kind of compressed them into this synopsis that addresses the key point that are needed and are needed in the curriculum by the nursing council. This, like we all know, skeletal system is, it is the skeletal, like the structural framework. It's like the bone of the body. It's like the core, the pillar of the body. Yeah, pillar of the body. That's the word. And it comprises of bones, joint, ligament. It mainly comprises of bones, but we all know bones cannot join together by themselves. Bones, at the point where they join together, is called joint. So joints are the point where two or more bones join together. And cartilage is like a flexible and tough tissue that protects the joint, that helps bones to join together, that supports the joint. Those are cartilages, and those are what make up the skeletal system. However, the muscular system are the muscles, tendons, and ligaments. All of these also helps to support the bones. They help to support the pillar. They help to make up the pillar of the body. So together, both of them work as a support. That's the framework or the pillar of the body. Both of them together works as it helps in movement from one place to another. When the joints move, it helps. That is the function of the musculoskeletal system. It helps in movement. It also serves as protection. Protection because some parts of the body are so delicate and needed to be protected. The very common example is the skull. The skull is a bone that protects what? The brain. Can we say the skull protects the brain? And then the ribs also protect the heart and lungs. Okay, those are examples of bones typically doing their jobs, their protection jobs. But muscles also protect. For instance, the abdomen. The abdomen contains fats and muscles that helps to protect the abdominal organs. So both of them serves as protective as protection. Then we have mineral storage. Bone stores calcium and phosphorus. So bones in their cell they help to store calcium and phosphorus. So whenever there's a depletion of your intake, whenever there's a very low intake of calcium and phosphorus, that's when your bone comes in and try to provide you more calcium. And if this is not corrected, it goes on to cause a disease, a disorder. Okay, because the bone is not supposed to be the main source of calcium supply to the body. All right. So it also helps in blood cell production. The bone marrow, we all know the bone marrow helps in erythropoiesis. That erythropoiesis means the production of red blood cell. So bone marrow, that's the marrow of the bone, helps in blood cell production. And then we also have posture and stability. They help in posture. It helps to maintain a good posture. It helps in making sure you can stand upright. Uh, People that have kyphosis or these are not in the notes, but you can just keep that for your record. Kyphosis, lordosis, and scoliosis. Those are malformations of the bone when the person cannot stand upright. Okay. Lordosis is when the body is when like an inward curvature of the spine. That's lordosis. And then kyphosis is when people have some people that have a lump on their back. When people have lump on their back, okay, it could vary in size. So when that lump is on the back, that's when they have kyphosis. It's a spinal deformity. Spinal deformity when there's a kind of huge lump. It's not a lump, it's just a deformation of the spinal cord of the spinal cord. Okay. So when musculoskeletal system helps in posture and stability, that is and help to maintain balance. So when the joint is dislocated, you can see it, you can easily tell when somebody has a hip dislocation. Okay, because the bones are not in place, the person has lost balance, the posture is off, the balance is off. Right. So we have this is skeletal system now. I'm gonna talk about the skeletal system first, then go to the muscular system. We've talked about it. Support. It is the pillar of the body. It's a rigid framework of the body. Protection protects the skull, spinal cord. Also protects the heart and lungs. That is the ribs. It helps in movement. It helps in storage. That's calcium and phosphorus. And hematopoiesis or erythropoiesis. That is red bone marrow production of red blood cell. Right, we need to classify bones because we have bones all over our body from head to toe, but they are different. They differ in sizes, they differ in shapes. Okay, the most typical one you have is a long bone. Long bone, typical example is the femur and humerus. They appear to be long. They have two edges. They are long. They have two edges, and they have a center part due to their structure. Then we have short ones. These short ones can differ in shape, but they're very short. That it says cube shape. Carpals, examples of carpals and tarsals. Carpals are the bones in the finger of your fingers. They are those small bones when they are broken down. The bones of the finger when they are broken down, that is what they call carpals. Okay, and tarsals are the bones in the leg, not leg, foot. Because the leg is different from the foot. The foot is the one that you used to step on the foot on the ground that you place on the ground. That is the foot. So the bones of the foot they are tarsals, while the bones of the palm, okay, they are the carpals, and they are examples of short bones. We have flat bones. These ones are flat. The bones in your skulls are flat. The bones of the scapula they're flat. Okay, they're thin, curved. That is why they are classified as flat bones. We have irregular bones. These ones have very complex shapes. Typical example is the pelvis. The pelvis is a very important bone that is studied on its own, especially for our colleagues that are midwives. It's a very important part of their program. They need to know the pelvis because it's a very important bone, and it's an example of irregular bone because it's got so many edges. It is complex. It doesn't have a normal structure, a normal shape. It doesn't have a simple shape. Let me say it's complex. And the vertebrae which houses the spinal cord, it's also an example of the complex bone. Then we have sesamoid bones. These ones are very small bones and they are in the tendons, just like the patella. So sorry. The patella bones. Do we know what the patella is? The patella is at the knee bone. Yeah, the knee bone. It's at the knee. Okay, so that knee bone, that's patella. That's an example of sesamoid. Because if you feel it, it's I think if I'm feeling mine now, and it's kind of moving around. That's the patella. So they are small. It's kind of small, round, and like this note says, they are embedded in the tendons. That is why it's able to move around because it's in the tendon. Okay. And the tendon, they are flexible, they have a limited range of movement. That's why the patella is able to move. So those are the five examples, five classification of bones that I have here: the long bone, the short bone, flat bone, irregular bone, and the sesame bone. Typical example of the sesame bone, don't forget, is the patella. Okay, patella. S- the long bone now. This is according to the curriculum. We need to talk about the long bone because it's most common, popular. Um, they have, like I said, it's a long bone. That means it have two edges. It has a middle part. It's like a ruler. If you know how a ruler is, it has two edges. Those edges are called epiphyses, like the end of the bone. They are called epiphyses. So in a long bone, that means it has two epiphyses. For instance, your femur, it has the superior one and the inferior one. The superior one is the one at the top, while the inferior one is the one below. Okay, so they have two epiphyses, that is the two end of the bone, and the diaphysis is the part that you can hold, the shaft. It's like the middle part, that's the shaft of the bone. Okay. The difference between the epiphysis and the diaphysis is the epiphysis is the end of the bone, diaphysis is the middle part of the shaft of the bone. The epiphysis consists of spongy bones. Spongy bone because the epiphysis, the spongy bones, like it gives space for growth. Okay, that is where people grow. People of kids or young adults, young no, I will not say young adults, teenagers. Okay, the epiphysis is where they can gain more length, gain more growth, gain more height rather, because it composes of spongy bone. Whereas the compact bone, that's the diaphysis, the middle part, is not going to allow them. It's not mainly for growth. It's mainly for it's compact because it needs to function as in function in blood production, in the formation of red blood cells. Like I said, erythropoiesis or hematopoiesis. So it needs to be compact. Okay. While the epiphysis, it has epiphyseal plate which allows for growth. Anyway, after the age of 22 or 21, I think it stops. Growth stops. So if you are 21 or 22, perhaps that is your height. That whatever height you are now is going to be your height. Then we have articular cartilage. This covers the epiphysis. Um, those of us that like to eat chicken, when we crack the bone, there's this kind of jelly-like gel-like part at the edge of the bone. Okay, it is not hard. It's not as hard as the bone itself, but it's there. It's always there. That is the articular cartilage. That's just there to reduce friction. To reduce friction between two bones at the joint, and that's what happens when due to stress or diseases or infection or other malformation, the if that cartilage is worn out and the bones are rubbing against each other, that is one of the leading cause of osteoarthritis or some other bone disorders. Okay, we have the peristrum. This is just the cover a layer, a fibrous layer that covers the bone. We have the medullary cavity. This one is the bone marrow. Okay, this one is in the marrow and it helps to store fat. It helps to store fat. And we have the endostome. It helps to line the medullary cavity. It's inside the medullary cavity. Bone tissues. I talked about when I was talking about the diaphysis and epiphysis. I mentioned about the compact and the spongy bone. I think here is same thing. The compact bone, they are dense and strong, okay, and it forms the outer layer of bones. So if you can remember, the compact bone, this compact bone is connected to the epiphysis, if you remember, okay, and it's also found in flat bones. If you remember the example of flat bones are also the scapula, examples of scapula, flat bones, the skull, scapula. Okay, those are examples of flat bones. So compact bone is dense and strong, while spongy bones, they are light and porous. Compact bone are found in the outer layer of bones, okay, and then spongy bones are found at the end of long bones, also known as epiphyses, and they also found in flat bones such as the skull or scapula. Okay, right. Bone cells, because bone cells they grow just like any other cell. Cells grow, they die. Okay, now we have three types of bone cells. The osteoblast. As a kid, you are born as we are all born little, and then we grow. Our bones grows as well. So osteoblasts are the bone forming cells. They helps us to form more bone cells that correspond with our growth, that determines our growth rather. Okay. And then we have osteocytes. Osteocytes are the bone cells that now maintain bone tissue. Osteoblasts are the ones that will form the cells, and then when they mature, they become osteocytes. So osteocytes are now the mature bone cells that maintain the bone tissue, that retain that skeletal framework, that retain the strength of the bone because they are now matured. Why osteoclasts are bone resorbing cells. This one helps to make sure that one bone, your left femur is not growing growing more than your right femur. It makes sure that your bones are not overshooting themselves. It makes sure that they are in line with your DNA. Okay, it makes sure that they are not growing abnormally. What they do is they break down cells, they break down bone cells, old one or damaged one, they break it down, and so that to give space to a better one to form. That way the bone retain its strength. Otherwise, the bone gets tired, they get feeble, and then they may be prone to fracture. But also clients make sure that those old or damaged bone cells are removed. All right. Bone development. How does bone develop? They call it ossification, the first one. That is how bones are formed. Okay. We have the intramembranous ossification. That's when they are formed as membrane and they form flat bones like the skull. And then we also have what we call endochondral ossification. That's when they form long bones. Whereas we also have growth plates. I mentioned the epiphyseal plate. Remember we talked about epiphyses. They're the end of the long bone, the two ends of the long bone, okay? And they contain spongy bone, okay, spongy tissue, bone tissue, spongy bone tissues. And now it's saying they form the growth plate. That is where people gain height. So here it says there are cartilages at the end of long bones that allow for growth in length. So just to reaffirm what I've said earlier on, epiphyses, again, just to recap, epiphyses are the end of the long bones, the two end of the long bones that contains spongy tissue. And then now it's saying the growth plate or epiphyseal plate at the epiphyses, the cartilages at the end of long bone that allow for growth in length, height, as case may be. Now let's talk about joints. Bones come together, articulate together to form joints. There are three main types of joints. The fibrous joints, that the ones that does not move, like the skull. The bones in your skull does not move. If there's anybody that is able to move the bones of his or her skull, that means something is going on. Something um amazing is going on because they are supposed to be immovable. They are supposed to be fixed. However, we all know that in newborns, in neonates, Sometimes it's the movement trying to get into the normal position at birth. The bones of the skulls, they are not fixed. Okay, but as an adult, they are immovable. They are supposed to be immovable. Then we have the cartilaginous joints. These ones are slightly movable, like your vertebrae. Okay, your spinal cavity, your vertebrae. You can bend down, you can flex. Those that do acrobat, you can flex, you can turn left, right, you can bend, you can wind your waist. All of that is possible because they are slightly movable. They are cartilaginous joints. They are slightly movable, but they are not freely movable. So do not make a mistake of over moving your waist or trying to bend or trying to lift an object that can cause damage to your vertebrae because they are only supposed to be slightly movable. Whereas the synovial joints, these are the ones that are freely movable. They have a higher or a much more range of motion. Example is your knee, your shoulder. You can swing with your shoulder. You can run with your legs because your knees are examples of synovial joints. It has a higher range of motion. Okay. Types of synovial joints. You have the articular joint, articular cartilage, synovial membrane, joint capsules. Those are just structures. Those are what made up the synovial joint. Okay. Um, yeah, that's it for the skeletal system. That's just a summary. Like I said, we've just a recap of what we've learned previously. Now the muscular system, they are similar. The movement, posture, um, heat production. This is very important because the muscular system it helps to generate heat through muscle contraction. Your muscle contracts, and when they do, heat is generated. Please, you need to bear that in mind. It also helps in stabilization. It helps to stabilize the joint. It aids the joint in stabilizing the body. We have types of muscle tissue. Types of muscle. Muscle. Your heart is made up of muscles. Okay. Your deltoid is made up of muscles. Okay. Your stomach is made up of muscles. But all of them are different. All those muscles are different. So we are looking at the types of muscle. We have the skeletal muscle. Any muscle you can this any muscle you can control voluntarily by yourself, that you can move, you can control, that is you have power to control, is a skeletal muscle. Okay. Now, for instance, your biceps, your triceps, you can move your legs, your thighs, you can do all of that by your body, by yourself. Those are examples of skeletal muscle, and they are striated appearance. It's like this means there's like stripes. If you look at them, excuse me, if you look at them under a microscope, it's got stripes. It's got stripes. That's how they appear under the microscope, like lines, stripes, just like rows. That's how they look like under the microscope, and they're voluntary. Smooth muscles, these ones are involuntary. All the muscles you can control, let me make it easier for us. All the muscles you can control by yourself, all the voluntary muscles are skeletal muscles. Okay. All the muscles you cannot control in your body are involuntary muscles, all of them except cardiac muscles. Okay. So if you can control the muscle, if you can control the movement, they're voluntary. All right. If you cannot control the muscles, they are involuntary and they are smooth muscles. The only exception is cardiac muscles, and cardiac muscle is only found in the heart. So the muscles of your heart are cardiac muscles, and they are involuntary controlled. You cannot control them. They are controlled by the nervous system. The other ones that you cannot control, smooth muscle, your stomach, your blood vessels, your esophagus, you can control your esophagus. So all other organs, all other muscles that you cannot control, they are the stomach, they are the involuntary muscles, they are smooth muscles, and they are striated. That means they are not striped. They are not striped like when looked at under microscope. And the cardiac muscles is also an involuntary muscles and is found only in the heart. Now, this is very important. The cardiac muscles are striated, just like skeletal muscles, but they are with intercalated disc. And the cardiac muscles, they are involuntary because each of them are able to pump to synchronize on its own. Each of them are able um to act, okay, on its own, on their own rather. So those are the types of muscles that we have. So we move to structure of skeletal muscles. How do they look like? They have muscle fibers. Skeletal muscles have muscle fibers. They have myofibers. They have sarcomeres. They have tendons. They have ligaments. Muscle fibers. This is the muscle itself. This is the main component of skeletal muscles. They are muscle. Okay, they have the fibers itself, the muscle itself, and then we have myofibers. This one are found within the muscle fibers. These myofibers are they are found within the myofibers. Sarcomeres are just the unit, the functional unit of the myofibers. Like I said, I'm sorry I don't have a diagram. It could have been very better to appreciate it with a diagram. Tendons, these are just the connection from the bone to muscle. It helps to connect them together. Ligament helps to connect bone and bone together. Mechanism of contraction. Cool. Um, when muscles contract, like I said, they helps in generating heat. And when they generate heat, when they contract, they require energy to contract. And that is why there's a sliding filament theory. This one is all about muscles requiring ATP. ATP is adenyl triphosphate. It's like a form of energy that is used by cell. Okay, so and muscle requires ATP energy and calcium ions. And calcium
XP voice privacy contents have been updated.
sorry.
To continue, review.
So they require ATP and calcium to contract. Sorry about that. And then next one is neuromuscular junction. This is when is acetylcholine. This is a neurotransmitter. This is when a kind of chemical is secreted in response to the nervous system and helps the muscle to contract. So all of these are why do we need all of this? All of these are necessary by the time we want to talk about the pathophysiology, the disorders of the muscular system, because we'll come back to make reference to all of this. Okay, because there are neuromuscular disorders that are caused when these neurotransmitters are not is not adequate. There are also disorders that arises when there's not enough ATP in the body, enough energy. There are also disorders that happen when the calcium supplement, calcium levels of the body in the blood is very low. So all of these, they are not just for fun. They are very much important, and you appreciate them more when we dive into the disorders of the musculoskeletal system. That is when we talk about med-surg. So we will come back to make reference to this. When muscle contracts, there are different types. Basically, we have two. We have the isotonic contraction. When people go to gym and they try to exercise their muscles, some are gaining length. They're, uh, they are growing their muscle mass. They want to have muscles. They're growing it, making that they want to look bigger. Okay, that kind of contraction is isotonic because it's about the length. It's about the size of the muscle. It's about the dimension of the muscle. Okay, now in isometric, like I said, metric system. Metric is just, it's not about the length, it's about the mass, it's about the weight. Okay, so the muscle remains the same in terms of dimension, in terms of length, is in length. Okay, but the tension increases. The tension, the weight, it has more mass. It's building more resistance. Okay, so those are the two different types. So there's one that deals with just increasing the length, just like when people take steroids to, steroids to gain more mass, more to look bigger. Okay, and there's some people that also exercises themselves. This one says holding a weight. You are training the muscle, okay, to gain more mass, to gain more strength. That is what isometric is all about. Um, we are going, we are moving forward. We have muscle fatigue. Fatigue, I'm sure most of us have been fatigued, one time or the other. The example is when those of us that ran marathon. I remember when I went to Nisong and I went for the 400-meter relay race. Unfortunately, I could not finish because I was really fatigued. I was completely depleted of ATP, and I felt like I was I was fainting. I had to be lifted off the track. So fatigue occurs due to depletion of ATP. When there is, even if you want to go, even if I wanted to go further, I wanted to try more, move my legs, but there was nothing. I wished, but there was no energy. All my I believe it was ATP. All the ATP, there was no ATP. It there was no energy for my muscles to contrast, to move. So I was just laying flat like a lifeless human body. Also, it can also happen when there's accumulation of lactic acid. Lactic acid is produced when your muscle work. It is like a byproduct. So, and when this lactic acid is accumulated to an extent, it causes fatigue. It causes that weariness. It causes that tiredness. When people go to the gym, like first timers go to the gym, and then when they practice and when they've done those exercises and they go home, you can see they are weak because it's either in that case, it's mostly because of accumulation of lactic acid. That one comes in later after the exercise is done. But depletion of ATP on the spot, if you've finished your energy on the spot, you collapse, you can't move anymore. Okay, that's that. And then we have ionic imbalances. For instance, if you have very low calcium levels or very low potassium levels or very low phosphorus levels, your muscles will be really fatigued. You wake up in the morning and you feel tired. You feel so weak, you feel so tired even after sleeping for 30 hours, you still feel very weak and miserable. That is fatigue. Recovery involves replenishing ATP stores, just it's the same thing, you just treat symptomatically. If you are fatigued because you've got no energy, that means you need some energy drink, you need to eat, you need to have some glucose, you need to get more energy. All right. If you're fatigued because of lactic acid, you need to remove. Lactic acid is a metabolic waste. You need to remove all the metabolic waste. Eat healthy to get rid of the lactic acid in your system. And if are fatigued because of ionic imbalances, if it's because you've got low calcium levels, then you need to take calcium supplement. If you fatigue because you've got low potassium level, then you need to have some more potassium supplement. So you need to address the cause. There is the cause of the fatigue need to be addressed for effective recovery. Okay. Now, what is the clinical relevance? Why are we studying musculoskeletal system? Why do we need to know them? We need to know them because the understanding will help us in treatment of musculoskeletal disorders. All right. I've just listed the common ones here. Osteoporosis. We know about osteoporosis. We know about the osteoblast, the osteoclast, and osteocytes. So whenever there's a malformation or whenever there's a problem with all of those bone cells, okay, causing loss of bone density and increasing the risk of fractures. We can tell what we can know what to do because we've got an idea of the basic functioning of the bone cells. So without the basic knowledge of bone cells about the osteoblasts or the osteoclasts, then it will be difficult to help a patient with osteoporosis. Okay. Same goes to all of this. When somebody has arthritis, arthritis, we know that this is the joint, inflammation of the joint. We know what the joint comprises of. The joint has ligaments, it has articular cartilages. Okay, we can tell that okay, it's this because this cartilage is gone, because the person is an elderly person, because of the previous medical history, the person was a worker, the person used to work miles and miles due to the job. So you can tell, it will help us to help our patient. The understanding of the musculoskeletal system will help us to assist our patients better to get the care they deserve. All right. Then there are some other ones. The muscular dystrophy. I talked about this before. The neuromuscular disorders. Examples include Guillain-Barré syndrome. So this also helps multiple sclerosis. The understanding of how the muscle works, the type of muscle cells involved, will help us to get definitive treatment for our patients and understand the disorders in themselves. Aging and musculoskeletal system. Aging is imminent. Everybody grow old, except in the nearest future if somebody is able to develop a procedure, a plan, or a treatment for aging. But I believe aging is imminent. Everybody grow old and we age. And with aging comes all of this. Decreased bone density. As you grow old, your bone density also grows old. Okay. Then it predisposes elderly to osteopenia and osteoporosis. Osteopenia, when the bone cells are less, low number of low blood cell, low skeletal cells, and osteoporosis when they are brittle and fragile. Okay. Then aging comes with reduced muscle mass and strength because, of course, aging, when you age, your muscle mass is reduced. You don't have the strength that you had when you were an adolescent. Okay. Those are um, um, normal outcomes with aging. We also have increased risk of joint degeneration because your bone density is now low. It may not be able to carry your weight, or due to your past medical history or past employment history or past work history, your job, all of this that you have done before, your sport, you like to run, jog, play ball, we do all sorts of things in our youthful age. All of this also adds um, to what happens to our risk, the risk we are exposed to as we grow old. So, in summary, the musculoskeletal system provides support, movement, protection, stability. Bones are classified by shape. Shape, I mean long bones, flat bones, sesame bones, and the rest. Can be classified in structure. Can be classified both shape and structure. We have with long bones having diaphysis. That's the shaft. Epiphysis, that's the two edge of the bone. And we said they contains the diaphysis contains what? Compact bone. Epiphysis contains what? Sponge spongy bone. And it also helps in the epiphyseal cartilage. It makes up of the growth plate that helps us to increase in height or length, as the case may be. We talked about joint. They can be classified as fibrous joint, no movement, cartilaginous joint, slightly movable, okay, synovial joint, freely movable. Talked about examples of the fibrous joint. Do you remember the skull? Examples of the cartilaginous joints, your vertebral column. Examples of the synovial joint, your knee, your elbow. Okay, we talk about the synovial joint being the most mobile. Yeah, we did that. Skeletal muscles, We said they are all voluntary muscles are skeletal and are striated. Okay. All involuntary muscles are what? Are smooth muscles, except the cardiac muscles. Please don't forget that. We talk about muscles contraction, talk about the sliding filament theory, and that it requires ATP and calcium. All right. And lastly, we talk about common disorders. We mentioned them. We didn't talk about them. We mentioned them because we're going to talk about them further in the course when we talk about the disorders of the musculoskeletal system. But we mentioned that there are disorders, and these are the reasons why we actually need to study the musculoskeletal system, because we need to know the basis, we need to know the normal before we talk about the abnormal. So I think this has been a very good class. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can drop a chat or drop a comment, and then you can always go back to watch the recording, and then you can always get back to us if you have questions. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening.